Hello, boys and girls. I'm so glad you decided to join us for our Vacation Bible School. We usually call that VBS, but this year I'm going to call it VBS because this is our first virtual Bible school, Vacation Bible School. And you know, Vacation Bible Schools are so much fun because there are so many wonderful stories in the Bible that we can learn about. And tonight, we're going to talk about a man named Naaman. You may have heard of him. Naaman was a really great guy. He was a commander of an entire army of Syria. Now, the country of Syria is up in this area of the map. I don't know if you can see that, but this is Damascus, the city where he lived. And so he was admired and honored by all of his soldiers and even by the king because he was a man of valor and he was a mighty man, which means he was strong and brave. And the king liked him very much because God had given him victories in his battles. And so he was very successful. So things were going well with him. On one of his raids, he had gone down and captured a young girl from the country of Israel and took her back to Damascus and took her into his own house and let her be a maid for his wife. And she did a very good job with that, helping this lady, and the young girl came to care for the lady and care for Naaman also. Now, Naaman had everything going for him except for one thing. He had a big problem. He was a leper. Now, that means that he had a disease called leprosy, and that was a really bad disease for 3 reasons. Number one, here's the young maiden and the wife. Here's Naaman. Look at his arms. He had these big, swollen, white sores all over his skin, and they were painful. And this was a terrible disease because it kept spreading over all of the body. So you really don't want to have that. Number 2, this disease was contagious. If anybody touched him and touched these areas, they could catch leprosy too. And then they would be in bad trouble. And number 3, there was no cure, no medicine, no vaccine, no way to get rid of leprosy. And that made him very sad because he couldn't hug his wife. It was hard for him to do his job. Everything was looking sad for Naaman. And this young maiden, this young girl, talked to Naaman's wife, and she said, "You know what? I wish that Naaman could go down to my country, Israel, and be with the man of God, because he could cure Naaman of this leprosy." What? Well, that was big news. Everyone thought there was no cure for leprosy. So Naaman, when he heard this, immediately went to the king in Damascus and asked permission so that he could go down into Israel and find this man. Of course, the king liked Naaman, and he said yes. He said, "I will even write you a letter to take to the kings of Israel on your behalf." So Naaman decided to pack up and go. He was kind of happy about it. He got a chariot out, and he got his horses, and he got some men to take with him, and he even took some gifts that he would want to give to the man who cured him. He took silver, and he took gold, and he took some beautiful changes of clothing, very nice gifts. And he started on a long trip. So he was here, and he traveled all the way down, a long way, to an area called Samaria. And Samaria is where the king was. And the king of Israel's name was Jehoram. So he found King Jehoram and showed him the letter from the king of Syria. And the letter said, "I have sent to you my servant Naaman so that you can cure him of his leprosy." What? This king was taken back. What? I'm not God. I don't cure leprosy. I can't make people live and die. I don't know how to cure leprosy. I don't know what to do with you. And he was so upset that he tore his clothes. And Elisha, who was the prophet of God, who lived nearby, heard that the king was so upset that he had torn his clothes and didn't know what to do with Naaman. And so he quickly sent a message to the king and said, "Send him to me, and he will know that there is a prophet of God in Israel." So he got back in his chariot, and he went to Elisha's house. Here we are, and he's getting excited. He's thinking, oh, this is going to be so great. Elisha's going to come out, and he's going to call on the Lord, the God of Israel, and he's going to wave his hands over my illness, and he's going to cure me. It's going to be great. But it didn't happen that way. When he got there, he knocked on the door, and Elisha didn't come out. He didn't even come out and say hello. Instead, he sent a servant to the door, and the servant had a message for Naaman. It kind of sounded like a command. And he said, go to the Jordan River and wash yourself 7 times, and your skin will be restored, and you will be clean. What's it? Naaman didn't know how to take that. For one thing, he was a commander of an army. He was used to giving orders, but he wasn't so used to taking orders. So he was kind of insulted by that. And he actually got mad. He was really mad. He said, I could go back to my home in Damascus, and there are nice rivers here that are better than that Jordan River. I could wash in them. I'm not going to do it. So he got in his chariot and started to drive away in a rage. He was so angry. But his servants stopped him. One of his servants said to him, oh, Master, if Elisha had asked you to do some great or wonderful thing, wouldn't you have done it? Naaman thought, oh, I guess I probably would have. And he said, then, Master, why don't you do this simple thing? Just simply go wash and be clean. So Naaman started to cool down a little bit. He probably thought, I'm not used to taking commands from servants, but actually he was not the one giving the command. It was the prophet of God who sent him out. And actually, the prophet of God speaks for God. So maybe this command came straight from God. You know what? I think I'll do it. I think I'll obey. And so he got in that chariot and turned it around, and he headed for the Jordan River. There it was. And he went right down into the water, and he started washing. He dipped himself and washed once, and nothing happened. He dipped again and washed. He dipped again and washed. He just kept dipping. 4, 5, 6 times, nothing happened. But he went ahead and did it 7 times. And suddenly, his skin changed. It was like the skin of a young child. Smooth and beautiful and perfect, like your skin. And he looked at his arms, and he was so thrilled. The pain was gone. The sores were gone. He could hug his wife again. He could do his work again. His life had completely changed, and he was so happy. He just couldn't wait to go back to Elisha and thank him for this. He was so happy, and his soldiers were happy too, you can see in this picture. So he goes back to Elisha's house, and this time Elisha actually came out and talked to him. And you know what Naaman said? He said, now I know there is no God in all the earth except for this God in Israel, your God. So he was convinced that God was the true God. And he said, let me give you gifts now for curing my leprosy. But Elisha said, oh, no. I can't take any gifts. It's not me who did this, you know. Man can't cure leprosy. But it was the power of God. And so no gifts. You can go home in peace and be happy. What a good ending to this story. And if you would like to read about this story in your own Bible, you can find it in the Old Testament. It's in the book called 2 Kings in chapter 5. It's about the first 19 verses. But you may even read there's more to the story. So I encourage you to do that. Now, every story that we have in the Bible is there for a purpose. And the purpose is for us to learn something from it. Now, what do you suppose we could learn from this story? Of course, it was so important that Naaman obey God and obey the command that he was given. He couldn't do it his way. He wanted to go back up to Damascus, wash in a different river. Would he have been healed if he had done that? No, that's not obeying. And then when he got to the Jordan, which is right along here, he could have washed 3 or 4 times and said, I'm done with this, it's not working. Would he have been healed? No. He had to obey completely. And that's what we need to learn. God wants us to obey. And who better to obey than God? He knows us. He loves us. He made us. And he does things that are good for us. And he wants us to do things because they are good for us too. So I encourage you to learn this lesson very young, that it's so important to obey God and to obey completely his way, not some way that you think is better. What a good lesson for us to learn. And now, if you'll indulge me, I would like to sing you a little song that is especially good for the young ones that are listening, and it is about some ducks, and about someone who did not obey. A big mother duck and a little baby duck went out for a walk one day, and the big mama duck told the little baby duck, be careful what you eat. But the little baby duck thought he knew best, and he gulped down a bumblebee. And the bee did buzz, and the bee did sting, and the duck was in misery. What a naughty little duck, what a naughty little duck, he did not mind, you see. And so, when we don't obey things, sometimes there are some very bad consequences for things that happen to us because we disobey. So if we want to have a reward when we obey God, we must obey correctly. And we will get a reward. We will be blessed here in our life on earth. And when that life is over, God will take us to heaven and we will be joyful forever. Now, that's our story for tonight. Thank you for being such good listeners. Good night.